In the history of video games, there have been few characters as prolific as Sonic the Hedgehog. Ever since he burst onto the scene in 1991, he staked his claim as gaming royalty. The Sonic mania that defined the 1990s was littered with cartoons and Happy Meal tie-ins, and of course, a movie that never got off the ground. Hello everybody and welcome back to Canned Goods, the show all about the movies that we'll never see. And today, we'll be talking about the development, plot, and cancellation of the cancelled Sonic the Hedgehog movie, Sonic the Hedgehog, Wonders of the World. Our story begins in 1993. The Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon series was being prepped for release later in the year, and Sega's consumer product director, Michael Ann Risley, was tasked with drumming up support for a Sonic movie from various Hollywood producers. One of the biggest detractors of this idea was actually the CEO of Sega of America at the time, Tom Kalinske. He saw how movies like Masters of the Universe damaged sales for the toy franchise, and how movies like Super Mario Bros. And Street Fighter gave movies based off of video games a bad name. So he was wary to say the least. Kalinske has gone on record stating that he believed the Sonic brand could have withstood the damage of a bad movie, but obviously avoiding a bad movie altogether was preferable. Despite Kalinske's pushback, everyone else at Sega seemed to be on board with the idea of making Sonic the Hedgehog a big screen franchise. And with that, Sega eventually signed a deal with MGM and Trilogy Entertainment in August of 1994. Richard Jefferies was tapped to write the initial screenplay. His work includes The Vagrant, a bunch of uncredited rewrites and script doctors, along with an ill-fated Silver Surfer movie that he actually worked on with Risley when she worked at Marvel Comics. Sega was pushing Jefferies to have the movie tie into their upcoming Sonic game, Sonic X-Treme, on the Sega Saturn. At the time, it was fairly commonplace to have video games that tied into an existing movie. But what Sega wanted to do was unprecedented, and is still unprecedented, a movie that ties directly into a video game. Jeffrey's first treatment, complete with Sonic X-Treme at the center of the movie's story, was submitted to MGM for approval in May of 1995, and this leads us perfectly into the film's plot. We open with Josh Pinsky, 12 years old, reading a school paper aloud to his class about a test pilot who was killed in an explosion trying to break the speed barriers, named Sonic. There's one problem. Josh's paper isn't finished, so he's rattling off his presentation largely from memory, and this is obvious to Josh's teacher, who tells him that if he doesn't finish the paper, he has no choice but to call his parents. Later that night, Josh eats dinner with his divorcee father, Hal, who's an unemployed computer genius. As they finish, Hal tells Josh that he's going out to find a rare computer part and not to touch his latest and greatest invention, the XRI, which stands for Extremely Radical Intelligence because this movie was made in the 90s and of course that's what it stands for. The XRI is a machine that uses artificial intelligence and holograms to do some pretty incredible computing. Of course, Josh messes with it, asking it to finish his paper, but it doesn't. Josh, with no interest in doing his homework, plugs in his Sega Saturn and starts playing his copy of Sonic X-Treme. Eventually, Sonic stops responding to Josh's controls, and through the use of the XRI finds his way out of the game and into the real world as a fully CGI character. In the commotion, Sonic's arch-nemesis, the evil Dr. Robotnik, and his goons escape from the game as well. Sonic gives them chase but fails, realizing that his powers get weaker the longer he's in the real world. Hal returns home to an apartment in ruin and a destroyed XRI machine. Josh's mom Lisa stops by and finds the apartment in its current state and immediately starts arguing with Hal. Josh tries to tell them that burglars broke in, but neither of them are buying it. Josh winds up back at Lisa's house and Sonic tracks him down. He tells Josh that the 7 Chaos Emeralds exist in the real world, hidden in ordinary rocks. The duo wind up finding a Chaos Emerald, Sonic regains his strength and lets Josh harness just some of the power of the Emerald to help him finish his paper. Meanwhile, Dr. Robotnik sets up a shell company called Shady Corporation and uses it to buy an abandoned amusement park which he renames Botnik Land. Hal winds up getting employed by Shady Corporation as the park's main research and development designer, and that's not by accident. Robotnik wants to use a combination of the now fixed XRI machine and the Chaos Emeralds to digitize the 7 wonders of the world, and he also wants to use the XRI to make a holographic ride to draw attendance to Botnik Land. Opening day comes and it's a rousing success because Dr. Robotnik made everything in the park free, so of course, kids flock to it. Josh and Sonic inspect the holographic ride and they discover that the kids who go on the ride fall under Robotnik's control and are replaced with identical replica robots called Kinderbots. These captive children are also enlisted in the search of the Chaos Emeralds for Dr. Robotnik. Josh and Sonic also discovered that Robotnik's digitizing of the wonders of the world is that so people will visit the park instead of the actual landmarks, making Robotnik filthy rich. Sonic gets captured by the bully bots, but Josh manages to escape and tries to tell Hal that Robotnik is evil. The kinder bots eventually return home and do everything their parents say, from chores to eating their vegetables and doing their homework. This obviously horrifies Josh, and he concocts a plan to get Robotnik to return to Sonic X-Treme by using Sonic as bait. Josh rescues Sonic and Robotnik follows them. A chase and battle ensue before Josh activates the XRI and warps all three of them into the game world. Josh and Sonic together manage to defeat Robotnik, and Sonic decides to stay in the game, knowing that his world needs him there to stop Robotnik's evil schemes. Josh returns home, and Hal states that the XRI is too dangerous to ever be used again. So instead of destroying it because they wouldn't be able to make any sequels after that, Josh just puts it away, and that satisfies Hal. The film ends with Josh returning to play Sonic X-Treme when he notices Sonic wink at him through the screen. Josh smiles, and the movie ends. This seems like a very standard, inoffensive kids movie plot. It's harmless enough. There's some interesting ideas here. Sonic being a game character within the world of the movie is a really neat Roger Rabbit style idea, and I also think it was very ambitious that Sonic was going to be really the first ever fully CG main character in a movie. So with all of this good going for the movie, why did it get canned? The story was well liked by both MGM and Sega, though there was debate about who should be the movie's villain. Shinobu Toyota, Sega's COO at the time, requested that Jeffries change the villain, as he believed that a Sonic vs. Dr. Robotnik story wasn't anything new to Sonic fans, though Risley believed that Robotnik was a strong villain, and Jeffries speculated that they probably wanted a new villain, so if they wanted to, they could introduce that villain into later games. Though it is important to note, if the movie needed to tie into Sonic X-Treme, a game where Sonic fights Dr. Robotnik, wanting the villain to be anybody but Dr. Robotnik seems like a little bit of a strange request. Before any more movement could happen on the project, MGM backed out of their deal with Sega, but Jeffries was given free rein to shop the script around and see if anybody else would be interested. He contacted DreamWorks, though they weren't interested either. And that's when deep down he knew that this project probably wasn't going to happen. And in 1997, the Sonic X-Treme video game was cancelled as well, which effectively put the final nail in the coffin for this incarnation of a Sonic movie. Though it was definitely an interesting idea, I feel like the movie was a bit too ambitious for its time. A fully CG Sonic would have been a massive undertaking, and the movie probably would have been compromised in some ways to get it out on time and on budget with a Sonic that looked halfway decent. So I ultimately chalk it up as a win that this movie never got made. Because if the final movie released is a compromised version of what was set out to be made, why make it in the first place? But that's the story of Sonic the Hedgehog, Wonders of the World, and the end of yet another episode of Canned Goods. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, have a beautiful day, and stay Hemmas.